Okay, imagine trying to completely reverse engineer the absolute meaning of life and spending 28 years doing it. That's exactly what we're doing in today's Explainer. We're going to dive into the absolutely fascinating writings of an author who did just that. He started out with this incredibly rigid, almost mathematical view of human creation, and over a few decades, his perspective shifted into something so deeply profound it actually challenges the very limits of human cognition. Honestly, get ready, because this journey is probably going to change how you view your own everyday existence.
To kick things off, let's rewind to 1998. The author was deeply entrenched in the world of project management, and he playfully posed a pretty wild question. What if God was basically just a stressed-out project manager? You know, working against this super-tight 6-day heavenly deadline, just trying to deliver the ultimate biological prototype before the weekend. It's a hilarious thought, right? Picture the creator of the universe literally glaring at a Gantt chart, checking off milestones, and rushing to get humanity out the door.
All right, let's jump into part one, the human project.
Back in that 1998 mindset, the author viewed all of existence strictly through this hyper-measurable engineering lens. He was using the tools he knew best to make sense of the world, so he literally broke human anatomy down into neat corporate deliverables. In his mind, the physical body, that's just the hardware. The mind, the intellect, our emotions, that's the software operating system running the whole thing. And the soul? Well, the soul is the battery. It's providing that divine electrical current. Because without the battery, the hardware and software are basically just expensive paperweights. It is a surprisingly cohesive way to look at human biology when you really think about it.
And he took this metaphor seriously to the extreme. He viewed our bones, fat, and skin as nothing more than mechanical packaging designed to protect the fragile internal components. The nerves and blood vessels, those are the processor and motherboard. Sight, hearing, smell, those are your data-gathering sensors. But my absolute favorite part of this is how he viewed sickness. A fever or a sudden pain wasn't just an illness, it was a built-in test. It's a diagnostic alert system, flashing red, warning the central processor that the hardware needs some immediate maintenance.
In this 1998 framework, he highlighted two specific features that made this biological project completely superior to literally any earthly technology we've ever created. First, it is a self-improvement system. This prototype actually learns and upgrades its own software entirely autonomously over time. Second, it's a self-replicating prototype. Once the original was launched, it handled its own mass production, no factory required. For any project manager, having a product that upgrades and manufactures itself is the ultimate impossible dream.
Which brings us naturally to part two, the missing manual. So this begs the obvious question. If we are the ultimate tech hardware, where are the interface control documents? Where's the user manual? The author humorously deduced that the original spec sheets are simply, well, unavailable to us end users. Think about it. We are walking around operating the single most complex machinery in the known universe, our own bodies and minds, without a single page of official documentation on how the hardware actually interfaces with the software.
We don't have the performance specs, so what are we supposed to do? We test the system. Humans basically spend their entire lives reverse engineering their own missing manuals through endless trials and tests. Ever wonder why we have school exams? Boom! That's intelligence capacity testing for the software. Sports? Those are threshold tests just trying to find the absolute physical limits of our hardware. And those routine hospital checks right after a baby is born? That is straight-up quality assurance, checking for manufacturing defects right off the assembly line. We are just constantly trying to figure out our own operating limits.
Moving right along to part 3, 28 years later.
Now let's fast forward a bit. We're jumping ahead to 2026. The author is now 78 years old, and he's looking back at his younger, certainty-driven self. And guys, after decades of life experience, his entire worldview has profoundly shifted. With 40 years of actual project management under his belt, he realizes that viewing a human being as a project is actually kind of arrogant. A project is linear, right? It has finite specs and a clear end date. But humanity is an open-ended creation. It's this dynamic, completely unmeasurable process. You just can't slap a spec sheet on a human life, because life absolutely refuses to follow a predictable, algorithmic path.
So, what was the biggest disruptor to his old theory? Emotion. He realizes that a single flash of joy, a sudden burst of anger, or a deep, heavy wave of sadness instantly alters our physiological metrics in a completely chaotic way. There is no algorithmic spec sheet in the world that could ever predict exactly how a broken heart affects the hardware, or how a moment of sheer inspiration upgrades our software in a split second. Human emotion completely shatters that rigid engineering model.
It's really interesting to see how his view on technology evolved, too.
Back in 1998, he called early AI a pathetic imitation of humanity's learning capacity. But by 2026, living in the age of peak AI, where supercomputers are generating art and solving impossible equations, he's incredibly humbled by it all. But even still, he admits that despite all our mind-blowing tech, the most advanced AI in the world still totally lacks the genuine cognitive complexity and dynamic life force found in the brain of a simple housefly. The biological creation is just infinitely more complex than our greatest engineering projects.
Okay, let's dive into part 4, the cognitive glass ceiling.
This shift in his perspective builds into a truly profound realization about human limitations. He proposes something so beautiful here. He suggests that our inability to fully understand our own operating system, that missing manual we talked about, isn't a flaw in the design at all. It's actually the exact mechanism that preserves us. Think about it. If we fully understood our own code, we would take absolute control of it. We'd manipulate it entirely. And in doing so, we'd destroy our own free will and the very essence of human striving. The boundary of our understanding is the exact thing that forces us to keep moving forward. He compares this cognitive glass ceiling to an asymptote. If you remember from high school math, an asymptote is a line that a curve continuously approaches. It gets closer and closer for infinity, but it never ever actually touches it. This brilliantly illustrates our human condition. Our purpose isn't to actually reach the destination of total knowledge, because if we hit that line, the journey is over. The whole point is to keep approaching it, to forever learn, forever strive, while always maintaining that little sliver of mystery.
And that sets us up perfectly for part 5, the fourth dimension.
So, accepting that we just aren't meant to know everything leads the author to define the space just beyond our cognitive reach. He calls it non-random randomness. It's a fascinating concept. You know those moments in life that just feel way too meaningful to be pure coincidence, but they aren't exactly overt, logic-defying miracles either? That's what he's talking about. It's this realm of deep, underlying patterns and meaning that we intuitively feel in our gut, even if we can't capture it in a lab or track it on a spreadsheet.
He maps out our entire reality like this. We operate daily within the first 3 dimensions. We've got the physical matter of our hardware, the relentless forward march of time, and our operational consciousness, our software. But hovering just out of sight, right past that glass ceiling, is this 4th dimension. It acts as an unmeasurable, untestable layer of absolute meaning that secretly orchestrates the non-random events of our lives.
The author, fully and completely abandoning his rigid project manager mindset by this point, playfully wishes he could just be a fly on the wall in this 4th dimension. He just wants to observe this layer of meaning without collapsing it or trying to reverse engineer it. He finally acknowledges that his highly logical, analytical brain has reached its breaking point. He's learned that you really can't manage the universe, you can only marvel at it.
So, as his brain playfully surrenders to the mystery, we are left with a lingering, pretty mind-bending thought. Is this 4th dimension of pure meaning an external place that we are forever locked out of? Or is it a quiet truth that is already coded deep inside our missing manual, just waiting to be felt rather than analyzed? Think about that as you go about your day.